Thank you, everybody. We'll bring this preliminary budget meeting to order for March the 11th. We acknowledge that we are in a traditional territory of our friends and neighbors and Treaty 8 partners of the Fort Nelson First Nation as well as the Prophet River First Nation. We acknowledge the treaty, we acknowledge the rights within that treaty, and we acknowledge the presence of the Métis people in our region. Please be advised that this meeting is available to the public to attend virtually and is being streamed and recorded. Is there any public who wish to speak to today's meeting? Any online? No? Okay, so adoption of the agenda is in order. Moved by Councillor Souls, second by Councillor Enoch. I see your hand go up. Thank you very much. Are there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Okay, so that takes us to new business. But maybe before I do that, where's Harvey? Harvey's down there. Harvey, this might be your last budget meeting with us, eh? Budget preparation. So thank you very much for all the work that you've done on our budget. Thank you for all the work that you've done in the EOC. Thank you for all the work that you've done, at recreation and around the community. And yeah, you've done a great job for us. So thanks very much. And, and there'll be lots of opportunities for us throughout the summer to congratulate you on your retirement, but this will be the start of it. You're welcome. Yeah. Okay. New business budget 2025. Over to you, staff.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Council. Thank you, Harville. I'll pass it on to Tony here in a brief moment. Just want to express my sincere gratitude to the staff. The preparation of the budget's a fairly large undertaking, which occurs annually. Takes countless hours to prepare and to analyze and review, and lots of eyes sort through it, and everyone has a bit of a piece to play, and it's a joint team effort, tag team effort, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago in a meeting we had. And of course, thanks to Tony for stepping back in and assisting us. There was lots of some transition that we've had to deal with over the past month, so pulling this together was no small undertaking for sure. Dealing with some things that were out of our control, of course, and Tony's going to walk us through the presentation as we walk through it. Go through the binder as we've done the past couple of years. Once we get to the various departments, department heads will discuss their specific budgets. We go as fast or as slow as council needs to go. Ask questions. Of course, the determination of this, or the process here is determining the budget has been developed based on the existing service levels, and navigating through all the various things we have to navigate through to put the budget together to provide those service levels, including interesting, tariff discussion we just came off of just now, which is things that we're dealing with in the background to work through potential impacts there, and of course inflationary measures, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, I'll pass it on to Tony.
All right. And I too want to say thanks to the team, because you wouldn't have this budget binder sitting before you with all of the information if it wasn't for the team. Some of the old dogs still sitting around the table, and we're teaching the new folks coming in how to put the information together and work through it, which it really is I call this time of year very fun, which a lot of people don't understand, but it's my jam. That's all I can say. So we're going to start walking through the budget, and Alicia, I'll just get you to pop to the next one. Just as a high overview, as Scott said, we're budgeting to maintain current service levels. So it's been our mandate over the last number of years to maintain current service levels at the most economical, in the most economical manner that we can. And so we'll get to a point where we actually see how we've done that over about a 10-year period. The information in your budget binder is to assist to make sure that we're providing as clear of a story to you as possible to understand how things are put together. We can identify that within this year's budget, we have seen an increase of $1.69 million for the IDCA. So it takes it from the 5 million to the basically 6.7 million. As we go through, as we were just having a little fun before the meeting started, in your binder, we're going to refer to the big colored tabs, regardless of the number on them, as section numbers, and the small white tabs as tabs. So if you've been given some information and it has tab 1, I think we handed out the reserve one. Just know that it's there, place it wherever you find it's most appropriate for you to be able to follow along. And I do think we had 1 or 2 other documents that were handed out just to ensure that we had the most up to date. So section 2 is going to take us through the departmental operating budgets and special projects. Section 3 through capital. Last year we had a few different sections in there. We've combined them all into one capital. And section 4 will be the grants to groups. As Scott said, as fast or as slow, if we need to take a moment and work through something, this is why we're here. And the next one, Alicia, thank you. So quickly, our budget timeline. Almost everything on the left-hand side is done. We're here. And going forward, we will be seeing consultation and further revisions as necessary. Our drop dead date is the 15th of May to be able to have a bylaw for our 2025 financial plan and tax rates.
Make a quick comment. So it does note on there that we'd intended to open the survey for the budget on March 10th this week. We've decided to delay that just because we've had some other surveys. We've been doing a lot of engaging lately. So we're going to hold off on the budget survey to allow for some other things to conclude. But we intend to wrap it up as it notes by in time for the final budget meetings. So that period of time is a little bit off from the slide, but nonetheless, it's still an intended activity.
Thanks, Jay. And once we get through this week, then we'll be looking at what the public consultation looks like and when we will be ready to bring back a draft for consideration. And so in terms of your binder, I think I just kind of went through that, the big section colored tabs and the smaller ones being the tabs to delineate the different sections within the binder. Sometimes we refer to our greens and our pinks. Our greens are our operating pages, our pinks are our capital or projects. And when we get to the final budget presentation, those will be our decision points. So if we get to a green page, when we bring the final budget forward, that will represent decision points. You're going to see the CAO's message. You're going to see my message at the beginning of tab 1, although I didn't put my name to it. I realized that after. So I'm going to have to fix that for the next iteration. But we're going to dive right in. And of course, you may as well put the end of the story at the beginning. So everybody wants to know, based on what we've got lined up in the budget, what's our tax levy going to be? So the budget being presented to you today, we take a look at all of our expenses and transfers that we make to reserve funds and reserves. We take off that all of our means of funding and any transfers that come out of reserves or general surplus. And today's budget presentation will be looking for an additional $2.77 million in taxes, and we'll talk about that as we go through the presentation. So what we always want to know is, in terms of our tax levy, what's the trend? And so, thank you. So in terms of this one, we know in 2014, we were still at a decent point in the economy as far as Fort Nelson was concerned. We know that 2015, 2016, things started to move, right? Scott's pendulum was starting to swing. We know that we began looking very deeply into how we spent, what our economies were. One of the things that we talked about the other day was that, for instance, we had snow removal crews going out Monday to Friday. And we got to a point within those years to say, but we know we clear snow on Saturday. So how do we bridge that? And how do we have our crews work so that we are not paying overtime for a normal crew on a Saturday? And so those were some of the types of discussions that we had as we went through it. And we were able to see economies of scale. We went through some restructuring in terms of departments and staff within that time. And then COVID, of course, hit about the 2020 mark, and the increased costs that we saw for COVID were offset by grants. And now we're actually starting to get to that point where the economy isn't necessarily rebounded, but inflation is having our need to increase costs in areas. We know certainly that wages have not gone down since 2014, but we've been able to mitigate within the budget itself to maintain that. We do see it on the upswing at this point. So in terms of sending out our tax bills, we think about what's our assessed values within the Northern Rockies. And what we've got is we've certainly got the residential properties with our completed roll showing a $1.7 million decrease in assessment, a very small decrease in assessment for business, but a $27 million increase in assessment for industry. So that's our utility companies, that's our major and our light industry. So there is still an upward shift in the assessment for industry that we were able to secure when the Northern Rockies was created. So the shift, right? We see small amounts going down, smaller amounts going up. Overall, our assessment increased by 1.3%. That in terms of distribution of the tax levy that we're proposing in this draft budget, we would see the distribution in 2024, for instance, for residential, 6.9% of that went to our residential assessment. Going forward in 2025, there is a very small decrease. Now, when we start looking at sample properties and we start looking at, did my assessment go up? Did it go down? Do I live in area A, area B? Am I living in town? There's a lot of things that we will see going if you're really scrutinizing the sample properties. But in general, for the whole municipality, there is a decrease on the amount that we're asking the residential taxpayer to pay. The shift is also seen on the business side, and then that is being taken up by industry. So this slide in your presentation is a bit busier, but I wanted to be able to use this slide for demonstration purposes. So what we're identifying is on the general municipal tax levy. So this is the one that fluctuates when we have a tax increase. We have an amount we fund for capital, an amount for the fire service area, amount for what we call new services, but it's our general municipal tax levy that either increases or decreases. So that levy in the budget that's drafted here today is 20,674,000. And so what we're saying, if we reduce that by $100,000, what's the impact for the home that's worth 100,000 in assessed value? So it's $1.83. So if we were to reduce the whole budget by $100,000, it's $1.83. If we were to increase the budget by 2.5 million, or reduce it, I guess, by 2.5 million, the difference is $45 on a, Scott, that was a $300,000 house?
It was $100,000.
$100,000 house.
Yep, on your assessment.
Yeah, so if, when we get to the point where if we choose to come back and talk about the impact of tax rate, this is a visual that we certainly will be able to use. So in the same manner, industry, if we're going to reduce by that $100,000 on 100,000 of assessment, they're going to see a savings of $6.05. Your business would see a savings of $5.32, and as we go down. So this is basically the data that we utilize to pull together sample properties. So anybody who wants to have a chat about sample properties after, we can certainly sit and walk through those scenarios to see what the changes have done to us here. And we'll go to the next one. So we talk first about our expenses and our transfers. And our overall change, we're moving from 62 million down to $58 million in the amount that we plan to spend. So there's incremental increases in our salaries, our contract services, minuscule amounts in equipment and utilities. Our government transfers we're seeing going up, an increase in the allowances, but where we're seeing the impact is that we don't plan on spending as many dollars on capital in 2025. We'll see the offset to that when we get to the reserves, and that we're pulling less out from the reserves as well. And then what we have identified is there's a $45,000 increase in the amount going to reserve. So we've spoken often, Scott and I, about the fact that our financial stabilization reserve fund is there to even out the waves. So we know that every 4 years we have an election. And so every 4th year we have a budget influx. So what we've done is we've set aside in this budget $25,000 to go into that reserve fund that will come out when in the year that we have the election. We also have $20,000 in there because we've identified that over the course of time at the fire department, our SCBA units themselves time out and age out. And we don't want to have those spikes. So we've began this year to put $20,000 in there so that when it's time to begin taking it out, it will act very similar to the major reserve funds, is that we're able to even out those hiccups. And I think it's really important that we're able to identify those things that are one-offs on a consistent basis and be able to, you know, like we do at home, put the money away until that expenditure happens, and we slowly build it until we need it. So that's why we see the 45,000 in there this year. And Alicia, I'll get you to go with the next one. So in this one, we recognize that we've got some changes in our, on this slide, we call it property tax, but that's actually the interest and penalty that we're charging on. Councillor Kerwin?
Yeah, sorry, before we move on, so at that last slide, yeah, at the, like at the explanation under interest, it says that Changes can occur in the interim. Receive notification from MFA that payments are expected to change beginning in 2026.
Yes.
So how do you see that impacting next year?
So the interest is actually interest on our long-term debt. And close to the end of 2025, we will have a sewer debt that is paid off. And it's one of the lower debenture payments that we have, but I think it's about a $35,000 impact. But we're going to begin to see those happen year over year now as our historical debentures and debt is paid off and we're not going into new debt. So there will be impacts too.
So if I understand correctly, the interest rate will be going up, but it's not necessarily going to be negatively impacting us because we have loans that will be paid off. Am I understanding that correctly?
No, so
Perfect.
the category for interest in the budget, the interest that we pay on debt the amount will decrease. As our loans are being paid off, we'll need less money to pay MFA.
Okay.
In principal and interest. Yeah. Thank you. And if I'm going too fast, just like, but, okay. Funding and transfers. So under the property tax, I think I said this is an increase in interest and penalty because our outstanding taxes is a bit bigger. So we're recognizing that. And we're seeing an increase in the grants. We've got 1.69 million coming in for the IDCA, but we also have grants last year for special projects that were just a one-time thing last year. So this is that combined look. Our fees and charges are going down slightly. Again, we had some projects that we were charging back some of our costs, and this is where you're going to see that reduction. We're reducing the amount that we're bringing from general surplus. And we are reducing the amount we're bringing in from reserves as a result of a lower spend on our capital. And I just want to make sure I didn't. Just a comment on that. When we see, as we're going through, the amounts coming from general surplus in the operating side are there because we had training and development costs that we didn't take advantage of in 2024, and we've moved those training opportunities to 2025, and they're being funded out of the general surplus. We raised taxes for them last year, so we'll be able to utilize that to finalize. And then we come to a page that we haven't seen in the budget in the past. Last year we had a large 11 by 17, and in looking at it, I like to be able to tell the story, and I like to be able to tell the story in a manner that we can pinpoint a number and say, this is what's happening. So your page 1 will be a summary, and then you'll have 2 other pages in behind it that actually give you the detail for the different service areas. But ultimately, the story here is that by activity group, we're able to identify our changes within the budget. So for instance, in operations, we're seeing that we have got a 6% increase overall in the cost of operations. So that's to run the water, the sewer, the rec center, the operations themselves. We also see that, so let me move back. Almost $1 million, which represents a 6% increase. Then we look at grants to groups. 16% sounds big, but it's $130,000 increase. And we've seen an uptick in the requests there. In our special projects and major maintenance, a 68% increase. And that can be shifts in whether or not it is a capital project versus a major maintenance project. A lot of times we'll see studies that work us into a capital project that will show up in as a special project before we get into it. So it's a shift in what we're doing there. We also see an increase in our overall capital projects of an increase of 522,000. And then when we start talking about what's going in and out of our reserve funds, the next section talks about what the total contribution, and I apologize, it says total NRM contribution, but it's a total contribution. It's not just NRM share that goes into the reserve fund. And we recognize that the IDCA grant that we get goes into that reserve fund. So the net amount that we need is there, which is 1.6 million less than the year before. Our principal payments on long-term debt, this amount will also decrease in 2026 as one of our debentures is paid off and we're no longer required to make that payment on the debt. And then we've identified at that point, we wanted to understand what our next net tax levy would be before we accounted for allowance for uncollectible taxes. So if we stopped right there, we'd be asking for $272,000, basically a 1% increase in the tax levy. But then we need to consider doubtful accounts, and we're looking for $2.5 million, bringing that up to a required tax levy of 2.77. So is there any questions at that point? We'll be able to questions, comments. We're good? Okay. So then, as I said, the page 2 and 3 takes us through that detail. You've had the opportunity to take a look at that if you wanted to break it out a bit more. And then we go to a budget overview by service area. And this one gives you the opportunity to compare each of the service areas' operations 1 year over the next. And this in the background, this is something we all do anyways. This pulls together capital, special projects, everything that those departments are doing. And then we're going to go on after that to our IDCA project summary. So we identify infrastructure projects and major maintenance sometimes that all relate to taking care of our infrastructure. And they belong to the group that identifies how we maintain our infrastructure, what we're reporting on to the province as a result of their influx of funds, how we're able to manage it. So what we do here is we like to be able to, say, here are all of those projects. And at the bottom of the page, be able to say, the bottom of the last page, be able to say that we've got $15.5 million worth of projects that relate to the IDCA. We've got $2 million coming from grants. We've got some money coming from our general surplus, and we have got $11.5 million coming from reserves. Our tax dollars outside of our contribution to the reserve funds is $1,127,780. So this is our opportunity to take a look at all of these projects and really identify that, yes, there are funds going in and out of the reserves, but additional tax dollars over and above that to go to work on $15 million worth of projects this year is just over $1 million. And I think there's a page that was handed out, and Scott, you had actually asked about this, and I don't know that you got the electronic version, but we do some work on our year end to be able to provide you this information, so it was a bit late coming to your binder. But we want to be able to identify what we're doing with our reserve funds. So in terms of the document that the page 2 of this document gives us an estimate of where we're going to land in 2024. Did you find it, Councillor Gerwin?
No, she was on. She did.
I was helping the mayor.
Okay, no, I
had no idea where he put it in.
well, just basically, and we can get you another copy, certainly. But just the overview. And so what we do is we take this information and we determine where we landed last year, how much of our reserves we needed, and how much we're budgeting to use our reserves. So the red flag on the play here is that we've been doing a lot of sewer work. And when we do a sewer project, we identify that there's an amount for roads, there's an amount for water, there's some drainage. But the funds that we've been putting into the sewer reserve fund are going to be depleted by the end of 2025, given the completion of the projects that we have in here. So this gives us the pause to either during the year visit, as we talked the vehicle and equipment last night, to visit our service levels and identify how we're doing in terms of funding our reserve funds. And it just may be that we're going to hit that point where we don't need very many sewer projects going forward. And if that's the case, this is fine. If there are more projects, we'll take a look and we'll see if there's either we fund those projects from borrowing from another reserve internally, or if we change our allocations going to the reserves. So that will happen as we go through and we talk about sustainable service levels this year, and council is given the presentations on the different asset categories. Any question on reserves, or we're all good there? Okay. Moving on, sample properties are in your binder. Alicia, if you want to go to the next one, that'd be great. Thanks. So this is the one for the sample house. If you have any questions on the sample properties, give me a shout and we can walk through them. But basically, if we look at this typical home, and I'm just guessing that the assessment's increasing, I should have decreased it a bit here. So the assessment goes up by 2.4%. Our taxes are going to go up on this home by $147. And that relates to the general municipal increase. And the increase in the assessment will also generate an extra $28 for those groups outside of that we contribute to the hospital district, as well as the school taxes. And what do we got next? Okay, so as we go through, we're going to get to the green sheets. We're going to get to the pink sheets. We're going to walk through the operations. And these sheets are going to tell us where we're at within the process. As I said earlier, when it comes to another, our next meeting, when we're looking at a final, this is when we would be. And now, Jay, am I correct? Or do we don't approve in principle at this meeting, do we? No. Okay. Okay. So although I personally call them decision points, at this meeting, they're not decision points. And from there.
Sorry, I think this, similar to what we did the past couple of years, the intent of the meetings here is to have discussion. Council is not necessarily approving, but the decision point is basically to present the budget to the community that
Yes.
council is prepared to support and back up. That's essentially the decision point. And the intent of these discussions is for council to be able to have discussions around supporting or not supporting various components of the budget. The intent is once that information
That's
goes
right.
back, the decision point in terms of approving in principle will be the final version of the that goes to council with any comments from the public. So just so there's no, we're not changing up the process this year. It's similar to the previous 2 years.
So next in your budget, we're into, tab 3 in the binder. White tab 3. Oh, yes, section orange. We're going to have to make sure there are no numbers on those next year. Section orange. Yeah. So what we know is that we're providing you with, our operating budget. So the first page you have in there, is the operating budget. And then on the next page, we take the expenses and we, identify the trends that we're seeing within those. And on the third page, we're able to see what's happening with the revenue within that as well. So what we'll do next is we'll walk you through the highlights that we found in those 3 pages based on our major categories. So one more slide, Alicia. And I think Aaron is online. And we're going to have Aaron speak to this.
Just before we go on.
So just a process question. So under the operating budget, we have the revenues here and we've got fees and charges. So it's my understanding that we don't have the information from the golf course yet in terms of the revenue that is coming in from the golf course. So when that comes in, where will that change be reflected?
So the actuals will be reported after the year end is completed and at the annual report.
Usually, yeah. So the annual report is what it'll show. So you'll see a more general version is when the financial statements are done, because of course your end information is done, but the annual report will outline the various, how last year went, or how last year the report from last year's activities, operational, capital, etc. In terms of this document, we project what the revenues are, which get rolled up into the revenues component. So overall, and if you're looking for a specific revenue number, we can provide that in terms of what the revenues were, but it doesn't necessarily, it just brings in the general revenues, right?
No, my question is just like, so you have estimated what that revenue might look like and has been already included in here. So when the actuals come in, I mean, I understand it's not going to be a lot of money. It's not going to make a big difference in an overall $20 million budget, but I just want to figure out where it's reflected. So it's just reflected in here under general revenues, right?
Under general revenues, all your revenues will be
and
reflected there, yeah,
charges.
because that's
Okay.
what offsets, yeah.
Thank you.
If you're looking for a specific revenue, yeah, I thought
Okay.
possibly, we can provide that.
So for me, to carry on with that, for me, and for me to carry on with that, that discussion about actuals, for me, one of the things I like to see is the actuals from 2004 compared to the budget of 2004 compared to the budget of 2005. So a document like this that listed all the actuals is something I'd definitely like to see once it's available to us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the intent would be to provide that as a separate document presentation to council to outline what what occurred once we wrap up, of course, year end and whatnot. We can provide a report to council to say, because that's all in, that's actually actual expenses and revenues compared to projected revenues and everything. That's in terms of what
Yeah,
the 2024 number.
Yeah, because you actually get to see what we actually spent. And if there's, without seeing the actuals, you don't really get an opportunity to see how close we hit the budget.
Mhm.
And ultimately potentially accountabilities if there are any.
Yeah.
And then how does the 2025 budget look against our actuals? Is there anything that is glaring there,
Yeah.
and so for me, that it's an important tool to to use or a document to use. It's just not ready yet, I guess, so.
Yeah, we don't, not until the year end's closed.
Yeah.
We'll use what we know at the time as a guide, because there, you know, and we'll speak to that sometimes in some shifts that you might see in the budget, or shift
Uh-huh.
might move from one area to the other area, just based on a trend that we saw in an actual or something like that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we'll be providing that to council so you can do a review and a comparison of, budget to actuals for 24 compared to the budget for
Yeah.
25. Yeah.
And I understand that, you know, that the reality of the world requires us to shift some things around, but ultimately the budget is a document of council, right? It's a policy of council. And so we should be able to see what's being shifted around and where and how much. Because if it's shifted, either a service didn't get used because we shifted money from it to somewhere else. So it was intended for a particular purpose. But if we shifted it from there to somewhere else, then we did more in one spot and we didn't do something in the other spot. So what didn't we do is, you know, is often something that we'll twig as well. So.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yep.
And certainly, so when we get to Public Works, for example, we've got a department that has 5 different service areas. And depending on the year within that, you may see a shift in the actuals based on what's happening that year, right? So for Public Works, we would look at something like that as a global picture, as opposed to water's down, sewer's down. You know, why? Well, our priority was to use manpower somewhere else or equipment somewhere else. So we will talk about those in a block as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I just potentially I see council's authority being fettered there, you know, not on purpose, but you know, that we probably should be setting some limits with respect to how much is shifted in anyone before we're informed. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but at certain, if it needs to be larger than what we're comfortable with, there's, you know, we should be informed when that's happening throughout the year. I guess.
Yeah, and I'll just add to what Tony talked about there. I mean, Public Works is a good example, and it's not necessarily on the spend on materials and supplies and contracted services. Where we see the fundamental shifts in Public Works is typically on the personnel side, which is just natural ebb and flow. Because, and I'll give an example, Public Works operator, which might be budgeted under the roads and grounds piece, because we basically is how we distribute the money, or the funds, I should say, or the expenses. That operator might be digging a water line, which is gonna get charged of water, right? So the goal that we have under Public Works from a personnel perspective is ensuring that overall we're within that number, because we have individuals in that department who work multiple service areas, right? So, you know, we don't say, no, we can't dig that line because you're over here, because
Yeah.
it's basically just a distribution. Where we really focus on doing what we can to nail down the budgets within those service areas is more on the service, like the contracted services and the materials and supplies, right? That's where we really keep an eye on, just because that they're specific, right? We're not charging a water valve to the road, or we're not charging asphalt to a valve or something like that, right? So,
Yeah.
so that's where you typically see the ebb and flow, is because those service areas are broken, are Public Works, sewer, water, cemetery, and solid waste. And then we just distribute the personnel based on where we think they're going to be based on historical trends, right?
Okay.
So, but totally not disagree. That's just in terms of that
No,
piece there.
I'll just tell you where my fears come from is, you know, I was involved with a budget where you know, there was a position hired for a particular thing that we were getting a lot of complaints about, you know, and that basically is janitorial services around an arena. And we were told that all this budget was for that. And eventually we found out it was actually, there was no clerical, that's why, there was no janitorial, that's why we're getting so many complaints. There was actually a clerical position that was, right? So it was that shifting of money without the council understanding what it was for that caused us some grief. So that's where my fear comes from. Not that I'm not saying that'll happen, but it's just a check it's one of the ways you can check is, right, looking at actuals versus
No,
versus
absolutely.
budgets.
Yeah, I totally appreciate that. And I can say without a doubt that doesn't occur local in here, but we
Yeah.
need to be able to demonstrate that on our actuals.
Mhm.
Right.
And we can do that.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay.
So with all our talk of government transfers lately, can you just remind me under this category, government transfers at 59,000, what does that include? Because it's not government transfers is what we've been talking about. So it would be way more than that.
So within our departments, and I think it's within RDP, we've got, if we're transferring funds out to another organization, it's being classified last year as a government transfer, so we haven't changed that. I haven't totally reviewed it. To me, it's a contracted service. But so within operations, we're seeing, and Lisa, I don't remember which one we were, that was the community shuttle. Community shuttle, okay.
So this 59,000 is the community.
Of that. I'm not sure what the other four is.
Yeah.
Okay, but I certainly will pull the information for that number and provide it at a later point.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think we have Erin online now.
You do. Is my volume okay?
It is, thanks.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everybody. As Tony mentioned earlier, the personnel costs or salaries, wages, and benefits as they're listed on your sheets accounts for roughly $533,000 of a change from 24 into 25. I've categorized those into three main categories. The first one is personnel changes. So this area accounts for approximately $185,000 of change. This includes a full year's of expense for the fire prevention officer, which was approved last year. Last year's budget only saw approximately 6 months of expenses budgeted. We have approximately $171,000 in succession planning costs. This includes for the Director of Recreation, as the Mayor mentioned earlier, who is leaving us about 7 months into this year. This also includes succession planning for 2 other positions that are leaving early in 2026. And in 2025, we also see the end of a personnel liability cost, resulting actually in a net savings of approximately $90,000. So all in, our net change is about 185. Base wage adjustments for 2025 include negotiated and contractual wage increases. We also always allow for a potential cost of living allowance settlement. These all resulted into approximately $253,000. Our group benefits and statutory benefits. So group benefits are our health, dental, travel grant, and medical travel grant. And statutory benefits are our CPP, EI, employer health tax, workers' compensation, and our municipal pension plan. All in, those had an impact of approximately $83,000 on our 2025 budget. The 2025 budget also includes approximately $84,000 in revenue versus in 2024, it was about $77,000 in revenue. And that's from the CRI grant. And that's to offset the Fire Smart Coordinator at 50% and 15% of our fire prevention officer. Were there any questions?
I don't see any. Erin, thank you.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Erin. And I'm just gonna take a little trip back to the question that we had just before Erin presented. So what we've identified in terms of government transfers. So when our business facade program, so we get the funds and then we disperse the funds. So we identify that as a government transfer. We also have identified government transfers within the NEBC tourism marketing of $6,000. We have some government transfers within the green waste diversion that falls there. And in the council budget under the mayor's discretionary, there's a $20,000 allocation for government transfers, depending on what's required during the year. We have the ability to code things there.
Yeah, oh, sorry, we can chat because everybody doesn't need to understand how my brain doesn't understand this, but because I'm just, the $59,000 amount doesn't match other ones. So, but we can
Okay.
deal with that,
Okay.
just you and I.
Okay, that we can do.
So
So,
can I just speak to the governmental transfer policy that, can I speak to the governmental transfer policy then that we're developing? Because that mostly is speaking to transfers to groups. It doesn't cover these. So in that policy, if we're gonna call these government transfers, we should probably identify them, I guess, in that policy. I mean, we don't have to do a lot with them, right? It's just identifying them so that when in the budget, when we say it's a governmental transfer, it's one of the different things in that policy. Yeah.
and perhaps in our operating, there isn't a need to identify these as government transfers, is what I would.
Right. So you could do that as well, right?
And I think.
Call them
that's
something
the-
else.
That's the course we'll take.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
I think, yeah, so government transfers is a financial term.
Mhm.
And council can call their government transfers program anything that you'd like to make it clear.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you know, that's
we'll do that.
entirely at your discretion. So however we manage it,
It's just to take the confusion away.
that's right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because you'll have governmental transfers go lots of different places
Oh.
here. They're all different because they're different governmental transfers,
mhm.
but they're all called the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. No, we will reduce that confusion. Okay, so let's go to the slide right after personnel. And I'm just gonna touch briefly on this because you're going to hear about it from the departments as we go through. But essentially what we've got is we're seeing in our increases in contract services. Now, certainly, I'm not precluding the fact that we've also had decreases in contract services, but what I want to do is I want to highlight areas that we've seen major increases. So we know that we've got increases in our professional fees. So we anticipate increases in legal. Certainly, we've got some contract negotiations coming up. We know that we've got engineering fees in the solid waste area that are starting to impact the operational budget. And we need to recognize what our real estate services. We're also seeing inflationary costs in software licensing. So it's that incremental inflationary piece there. We have got rental expenses at the Cameron Building where the fire department is right now. And at this point, the cost of utilities and taxes is estimated at $107,000 for the year. We have got a new condo coming online, although it isn't a large amount of money. We are seeing that there is increased operating costs there as well. Recruitment, we see a succession plan built into the salaries. We also see the need to be able to recruit for those positions. We are looking at an increase in costs for the golf course operations that Jonathan will speak to when we get to that section. And we've identified that our obstacle limitation services budget line that continues to show up as a special project really is an operational cost. We're spending $30,000 a year in addressing the clearing and those sorts of things. So we've operationalized that. It has shown us that it is not something that's a one-off. It's something that we're doing on a consistent basis. So adding that in to the operational side, we see that increase. No,
Tony,
yes.
you mentioned with utilities, I didn't see much of an increase there. We're not foreseeing much of an increase in our utilities this year.
No, actually, and Harvey may speak to it. We were chatting about it internally. What we're seeing is that our efficiencies are there and our actuals are coming in at such a point that we're seeing no need to increase.
Good news.
So, very good news. And it's not in here, but we just received the invoice for our municipal insurance. And our municipal insurance went up by less than $1,800 for the year. So again, another good news story. We did budget based on last year's actuals, and the invoice came in within, like I say, 1,800. So there are some things that we are seeing the line is being held on them. Okay, and then in terms of our equipment supplies, often I say between your contract services and your equipment and supplies, you may see some refining of numbers where a department might determine that they're going to purchase the equipment in any given budget year and utilize their own staff. So, sometimes we see that going back and forth, but we do recognize that in our equipment, given the increased call volume that the fire department's having, that we've got an increased need for our PPE, our replacing equipment, the foam that we're using, right? Chief is going to be able to speak to all that. We are seeing that we've got in our water service in 2023, we had about a $28,000 expenditure that didn't get into the 2023. The equipment did not arrive on our doorstep until 2024. So it ended up in the 2024 budget, and it was funded out of surplus. So we actually see a reduction on that line if we're looking directly at the water piece. We recognize that council has approved an expense for the gifts for the evacuation host communities, which didn't happen in 2024, so it will show up here. And there are some items in Public Works that have a minuscule increase to our materials and supplies. So on the spend side, that's it. On the revenue side, as I said, we've got a small increase in our penalty and interest associated with our outstanding taxes and our grant revenue from IDCA. As we go through, so that takes us out of white tab number 3. We're going to go into white tab number 4. And what you'll find there is you'll find an overview of all the special projects that are within the budget. And at this point, we would take you to general government, but we would like, first of all, ask if there's any questions on the overall budget itself before we get into the departments presenting their information. No hands. Okay. Okay, so Alicia, we're going to go forward a couple slides to the one that says protective services. And I'm going to hand it over to James to start walking through.
We're jumping to protective services just in case it's James at any given time can get a call to leave. So we'll get him done and dusted just in case a call comes in. Then we'll follow.
First and barrel.
Yeah.
Right. So thank you, Mayor, Council, for allowing me to present to you the 2025 Emergency Services Protective Services budget. So the Northern Rockies Regional Municipalities Protective Services budget is comprised of the Fire Rescue Service, Emergency Management, Safety, Animal and Bylaw Control, and the Fire Smart. I'll just give you a quick little update on some stats we did last year, and then I'll get right into the rest of the budget. So last year, the Northern Rockies Fire Rescue had a $68 million fire save for values and a $11 million fire loss last year with all the calls we did. Out of all that, we had 40 suspicious fires that resulted in the majority of our fire losses. And 3 of those 40 suspicious fires were out of our fire protection area, so we didn't respond to those. We just did the fire investigations of those. So last year in 2024, our total call volume for the fire department was 714. And if you need any, if you have any questions on what the breakdown of those calls was, I have all that information, so I can give you that. Last year, our fire department, both career and paid on calls, did 1,530 hours of specialized training. Bylaw officers responded to 40 bylaw incidents in 2024. And our animal control officer responded to 91 calls of service for last year. And the bylaw department works in conjunction with the Fort Nelson Wildlife Coordinator. And we're still working on dealing with trying to mitigate any wildlife coming into the town. And last year, bylaw did 22 garbage bin violations where we went out and we spoke to the public in regards to the proper hours to have their garbage bins inside and stuff.
Chief, did we find anybody last year?
I don't have that right in front of me, but
Okay.
I don't think we did. We did mostly education last year.
Thanks.
Revenues for, so in total, the calls for service for the total protective services was 867 calls of service. That's fire and bylaw and medical, everything combined. Protective services grant revenue of 83,000 has been allocated to the Fire Smart, as Aaron mentioned earlier, to offset personal costs transferred from the regional development and planning and fire associated with the anticipated Fire Smart coordinator and with the new fire prevention officer. So their duties will be also funded by the Community Resiliency Fund grant. Revenues related to protective service fees and charges have been decreased a small amount to recognize less chargeback revenues associated with 2024 that was completed with the emergency measures and EOC, which is not occurring in 2025. Some transfers from the general surplus in 2025 are budgeted to be roughly around 68,000, less than 2024 due to a decrease in carrying funds forward from 2023 to pay for equipment that was still on order that we didn't receive that year. And with EOC, which is not occur, and then we have 11,000 of transfer from general surplus to cover for deferred bylaw training. So last year we didn't get the bylaw training done that we wanted to get done. So we're going to transfer that this year. The overall protective services expenses budget is roughly a net increase of 14% over 2024. And that's due to a number of factors. So we have our salaries and wages with the benefits for 2025. That's going to be roughly 10%, which is around 197,000. And that's due in part to having a full-time fire prevention officer this year that we didn't have last year. And anticipated negotiation with contracts coming up on renewal this year that could increase, wages and benefits. Same thing goes with the emergency measures salaries and wages and benefits increase amounts for the EMO portion of base wages for staff as well as scheduled EOC personnel that may be on call during the wildfire season. As was mentioned earlier, our contractor services, you're going to see a 22% increase, roughly 121,000 increase over the 2024 budget. You'll see an increase that includes the 911 contract this year is going to be roughly increased to $5,700. 107,000 for the rental and charges for the Cameron building. You'll see a $10,000 increase on communications for critical fires for our communication system for the fire department, and a $7,600 increase to allow for additional EOC and fire training for fire staff training for staff. The equipment and materials and supplies. For 2025, you're gonna see an increase of 25%, which is roughly 63,000 over the 2024 budget. And most of that is due to our increasing call volume with the use. We're wearing out our turnout gear a lot faster than what we had before in the past, and just wear and tear on all of our equipment and supplies, the apparatus, just for maintaining everything to keep it all in tip-top shape. And as mentioned earlier, utilities, you'll see a 0% in our utilities this year. Any questions on that so far?
So we have a contract service with Fort Nelson First Nations for fire protection. Where does that revenue show?
That'll be in total.
Yep, it's in the total revenue line in the operating.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions on that part? So did we just move to the payments?
Yep. And so now we're moving into the pinks, and I think we have tagged Lisa or Aaron to speak about a special project.
Yep, it's me again. Hi, so there are 4 special projects in the protective services area that are included in the 2025 budget. All are 100% grant funded. 2 have recently been before council, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on them. That is the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund, EOC, and ESS grants. Both of those grant applications have been submitted, and we're waiting to hear back on them. The one that is really, we're really quite excited about is the EOC one, which we're hoping to purchase an enclosed trailer for our EOC equipment and supplies, and also to help outfit a secondary EOC at the Cameron building. The third one is again the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund. It's for the public notification and evacuation stream. So we have not yet submitted this application, but it is the intake is in April of 2025. And there are a number of activities that this particular fund will address, and a couple of the samples are listed below there. This application, when it's ready, will of course come before council for their approval before it's submitted. And yeah, we'll be working on refining what those activities are going to be here in the coming weeks. The last one on this list is the Emergency and Disaster Management Indigenous Engagement. So this is a special project that is managing the funds that the province distributed to local governments and First Nations to help with the implementation of the Indigenous engagement requirement that's contained in the Emergency and Disaster Management Act. So when that act came out, there was increased responsibilities on local governments to engage with the Indigenous partners within their areas. So for us, that actually included all of the Indigenous partners that are within the Treaty 8 territory. So we have been reaching out to and have managed to sort of secure a bit of a partnership with Prophet River First Nations, Fort Nelson First Nations, Doig River First Nations, and Lower Post. And what we're doing is actually combining all of our funds together to create a large project to help Indigenous engagement when it comes to emergency management across our entire region. So we're still continuing to reach out to other Treaty 8 nations that have traditional territories within our area. So it's a really, really exciting project. The $80,000 is the $40,000 that we received in 2024, plus we're anticipating receiving an additional $40,000 in 2025 for that project. Are there any questions?
Aaron, it's Lorraine. So when you say we are reaching out, who is the we? Like, is this the Human Resource Department? Is it the Fire Department? Is it planning? Like, who's the we?
The we right now is being led by Terry.
Terry?
Terry,
Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, so
Go
all
ahead,
of
Aaron.
yeah. So what's happening? We're sort of in a transition period right now. But the goal is for the emergency management activities is being transferred over to the community and fire smart coordinator. So all of this activity is slowly being transferred over to Terry. So Terry is 100% leading that project, and the all four that are listed.
Thanks.
Okay.
I forgot my mic. Sorry, Erin and
That's all right.
Kyle. So we did go through that based on the screen, and certainly there were pinks there that spoke to them. So as we get to each section, we'll ask council whether or not they would like to go off the summary sheet or go through each project itself. And now we're going to take you to white tab number 26, which is the capital for the, and Alicia, we don't have a slide for it. That's okay. I'm pretty sure it's tab 26. Sorry, 27.
Oh, we're bypassing like the big tab 3 though.
Yes, we are. We're bypassing the fuchsia orange tab to go to tab 27, please. I did say 26, and I took you on a ride that I shouldn't have. Tab 27. And we are going to have Chief and I think the CAO lead us through the projects that are here.
Okay. So the first project you'll see that we're asking for is currently we have a SCBA, so our self-contained breathing apparatus fill station at the fire hall. It's reached 28 years of service, so it's been in use now for 28 years, and it's starting to give us some minor issues. So with our location and being the only one up here in the north, if ours fails, we would have to ship our bottles south to get them filled. So what we want to do is replace that before we have any issues and we don't have the ability to fill up our self-contained breathing apparatus. So we're going to be asking for $58,000 to replace that system with a new system. It's going to increase our fill capacity. Right now, we can only fill 2 cylinders at a time. The new one will give us the ability to do 4 at a time, and it's more, and it'll be meeting more of the industrial safety standards today versus what it did 30 years ago. So.
Yes, go ahead.
What will we do with the old one?
Yeah.
Will we keep it as a backup or will we send it
Continue.
somewhere? Oh, we don't know.
It could be kept as a backup, I'm sure.
Or you could use it till failure, right?
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Which extends the life of
Of
the new one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Use them both. Right? Yeah. Okay. That's what my question was going to be.
Where was it this?
Never good.
Not going there. The next one that I'll speak to is regards to new fire hall. So lots of conversations, obviously, with council and lots of work done internally. So the intent of these funds, which comes out of the building and reserve fund, is, we're currently in the process of developing the fire hall business case, which is going to help assist in determining if it's more cost effective to do the required code upgrades for the fire department, the existing fire hall, or if it makes sense to do them to purchase the Cameron building and do those code upgrades there. So in order to do those, we've enlisted the assistance of because of the end use of the building being a fire department or fire hall, we're required to have architectural oversight. So we've enlisted the assistance of James Emery with Airedale Architecture, who had been using as part of this program. So he's been well exposed to the community and the various buildings we have here and whatnot. So it made sense to continue using them because he's done the work on the Public Works Fire Hall building also as part of that code upgrade piece there. So these requested funds are be utilized for that engineering service for design for the necessary upgrades, so we can determine what the cost is to do particular upgrades, so we can present that business case to council in the future here, and so an informed decision can be made. Any questions on that one? Mike, sir. Mike.
Oh, sorry. I don't even know if I want to go up here or not. Let me think this through a little bit. So we have the old fire hall, which we have funds to do the roof and the foundation, and those funds are in hand already.
Yes.
We know we have space problems, right, between the fire department and Public Works.
Yep.
I think it's generally accepted that Public Works would expand into that entire building after the repairs were done, if there was a place for the fire department. I think this may be where we're not far enough along, as whether or not council understands, I guess, the potential opportunity with the Cameron building. And I mean, do we need to spend an awful lot of time doing a business case?
The business case
When I
is the
think
easy
most
part.
of us are almost there.
The business case there is the easy part. What we need to do is understand, so no matter what, we need to understand the purchase price of the Cameron building, because the work that would get done at the Cameron building is gonna be part of the purchase price, because the owner will supply essentially do the work, right,
Right.
which is it. We were hoping it was just a matter of going to Ed and saying, build a clean room, a dry room, a hose tower, et cetera, or a hose tower, but a hose drying area and
Yeah.
whatnot for doing hose work for that particular work. But we were required to utilize qualified engineer to provide the design. So this is where the funds are. It's the business case component's easy because we have an idea what the cost is already for the upgrades to do if the fire department was to remain in the old fire hall. We're just determining what the costs are to do the upgrades to the Cameron building. That's essentially what these.
All right,
funds
so
are.
that's not business case really, then it's just really understanding by using a professional architect and using a professional engineer to figure out exactly.
They need to do the design.
Design, so then
we
you know
can-
what the cost
Yeah,
is.
and then what it will do is, like I said, the business case is easy then, because quite frankly, it's, we just don't have the ability to say, this is what the cost is for this facility versus this facility once you do all the upgrades, because we don't have the design done yet for
Right,
the.
okay, so this $100,000 professional services then to determine that. Do the design,
determine
what
the
the new
cost.
design and what the cost would be, so council can make a decision. Okay, okay, good, thank
Yep.
The next pink sheet is going to be a rehab trailer. So currently today, firefighters, depending on the incident that we're working on and the strenuous work that they're doing, and after breathing 2 cylinders of SCBA air, we're required to go into rehab and get checked out to get medical checks done to ensure that we're fit for duty to go back to the fire ground to keep taking part in emergency activities. So today when we do that, we have BC Ambulance, they do our medical checks for us, and we currently use our rescue truck today. So we only have the space basically to have 2 paramedics inside the rescue truck and 2 firefighters go into the rescue truck to get their medical checks done. And then when we have food or anything arrive on scene, we're standing outside in -30, -40, having having a snack or before we can continue on to work. So what we're looking at is basically an enclosed trailer, roughly between probably 25 to 28 feet, that would have the ability that BC Ambulance, when they arrive on scene to our emergency calls, that they can set up the medical equipment inside an enclosed area. And we can also utilize that as a rehab place where firefighters can go in, strip down their turnout gear inside the warmth versus outside in the cold, and then sit down and have a break at a proper table, and the ability for females to have a washroom to actually use on scene where we don't have that ability today. So this is we're trying to go through the Growing for Community Fund grant, and we're asking for $70,000 for that. We did totally.
No. That's. So, the only other item.
I have a question on that. I have a question on the trailer. So are we buying an empty trailer and converting it, or are we buying a trailer that's specifically designed for this?
So the one we looked at, we had a few different ideas with different companies, and the one we're looking at would be basically customized to have a proper room with running sinks and a washroom area.
Okay, so it's coming
It's-
converted already?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
James also fielded the request from Toad River for the fire equipment that's in our grant to aid section. Do we want to chat about that now?
It's under community,
It's under community
it's a
group.
ways away yet.
It is
Yeah.
quite a ways away,
Oh.
so. Perfect, okay.
August.
Okay, no, that's good. We just wanna,
We're,
we just want to make sure if we did, then we would do that now, but we'll
we
bring
can- we
that
can-
forward
We can hit
later.
it when we get to, it, I think. It's probably
Okay,
appropriate.
perfect.
Is this, is this a spot where I could bring up the fund that I was talking about? Like, cause we're having a discussion about whether or not infrastructure to help with fire, guarding the community is, infrastructure, or is it not infrastructure? Is it, capital that would be within
So I think.
emergency operations or fire or public works?
So I think based on the general theme, I think under emergency operations would make sense to have the conversations. How it gets coded internally, we can figure out later, but I think if you want to have your discussion, because you're specific around the various, the potential fund to deal with some of the things your committees chatted about and discussed, correct?
Right.
Yeah, so I think,
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to bring that up now. that
So
would
is
make
now,
sense under
now the
spirit.
time to at least have a general open discussion about?
I think so. If you're fine with it, sure.
Okay. So, the Wildfires Fire Smart Resiliency Committee has some ideas with respect to potential projects around the community. Chief, you were at the meeting where we talked about the pond, for instance. So in the event that that there was a wildfire encroaching on the community, and we also had fire curtain ability, so mass water pumping, and the committee's concerned that the wildfire service, is not necessarily committed to that form of firefighting or prevention of a fire that comes into town with respect to, these are huge, big water monitors with huge volumes of water. You've probably seen some of them that have been used around. But if you have that, you have to have a large source of water, various large sources of water around the community so that you can actually pull from those water sources and use them for this. And so that's one, so the development of large storage water bodies, whether they're man-made or whether they're sea rings or something like that, there's the potential for the committee to ask council to move towards that so that we've got these mass water delivery systems and mass storage systems. That's one.
Talking about those holes.
Yeah, so they're talking about huge big hoses with large pumps that can move, 6 to 8 inches of water to various large
Mhm.
sprinkler
Like you could-
systems that they're putting out 100, or 50 meters of circle of water. And they're staged so that you create, kilometers of these huge water curtains to prevent sparks and things from coming in.
Cause somebody contacted us last year doing,
That's right.
during the wildfires,
That's
cause
right.
that's what we're
It's,
talking
we're
about
talking
here,
about,
right?
yeah, either owning that or having the ability to rent it. But if you do, there's certain things you need in the community. You can rent pumps. The pumps are here in 6 hours from Fort St. John with the big fracking companies. But you might have to have sea rings set up, or you might have to have these massive water storage areas. And so the committee is thinking about projects like this. Nothing is like defined yet by the committee, but they're talking about this. And so that's one, mass water storage and mass water delivery. The other is doing fire breaks around the community in conjunction with the community forest. Now, the community forest, of course, has two owners, ourselves and our neighbor. And they have a plan, I guess, with respect to cutting permits and doing logging blocks close to the community to try to reduce the amount of large trees and potential sparks that get into these large stands of timber and then start spraying sparks all over the community. So I had a map I'd show it. There's several polygons that also match with the Ministry of Forests has done some risk assessment work, and they're, they haven't presented it to us, but unofficially they're pretty closely related between what the Fire Smart Committee is interested in doing and what the Ministry of Forests has identified as potential areas, and whether or not those are within the community forest itself. But of course, if the community forest does this, they're doing it locally, they're doing it, in conjunction with the owners and our thoughts. But the caveat always for the community forest is they need not to operate at a loss. And so the Community Fire Smart Committee wants to see them move onto these polygons, these potential forest areas closer to town quickly. So they may not be able to wait till they get the optimum price for the wood in order to provide the safety to the community. So we may need to potentially prop the community forest to allow them to do this work, get the best price for the wood, but may not be, it may not fit the goal that we've all set for them, which is they need to at least break even, if not make money at what they're doing. So this, I'm proposing a fund that could assist us to prop the community forest if we had to, and they're able to do the work, and work towards, with the fire department. Obviously, they only just introduced the topic that one night that the chief was there, and at least preliminarily, is that a word? Yeah, preliminary. Yeah. There's some interest around the entire table to look at that. So how much? I don't know. I would say in the order of $500,000 is what I think should be there. I mean, and I'm really grabbing that, and I would look to Councillor Souls to give me a bit of an idea. But the work that they did at 301, that they got a Forest Enhancement Society grant for $330,000, something like that. And so, so that's why I'm thinking $500,000 for this year. It may take multiple years, but for this year, to at least put some funds in a pool that, the committee's not gonna decide to do these. Council is going to decide to do these, but without the money in the budget in the first place, our hands are pretty tied. So that's the thought. So I'm certainly interested in what your thoughts are. Councillor Growing?
So we have a partner. So have there been any discussions with our partner yet?
No, this is just, I brought this up for our budget purposes yet. We haven't, this hasn't gone, well, they have a member that sits on our committee, so I'm not sure if she would have taken any of this back yet. But there has been no official discussion with them with respect to the community forest doing this work.
I guess I would feel funny about proceeding. And we wouldn't even be proceeding on a
No.
project where it's just like all very tentatively, maybe trying to find $500,000, but it might be a no-go once we talk to our partner or whatever, because we can't just act alone.
That's right. But we're having our budget discussions now.
Yeah.
Right, and if we don't set it aside, if we don't use it, we don't use it. But if it's not set aside, we don't have it to use it. And, by all intents and purposes, people think that this is an important year to get these things started. So that's why I presented here today as a opportunity or an option or something for us to think about. Counselor,
So the $500,000, would this be an increase in taxation? This
we
particular-
we would have to decide how we wanted to raise that, whether through taxation or whether there are reserve funds. I don't know that we'll get grants, but in time, but potentially, because we've already used up our access to the help me, we just, no, not forest enhancement, the ones at UBCM. The 40,000 that we're talking about, so
The CRI funds?
the CRI funds, we've already made application for those, our maximums there this year.
Hmm.
And I don't know of any other funds that might be out there. However, the community forest might have an idea where funds might be, and the First Nation might have an idea where funds might be that could assist with these.
And so for the water storage for fighting fires or creating that water break.
Yeah.
Are you talking like permanent infrastructure that would be built, installed, maintained? Or are you talking something similar to the bladders that were kind of put along the highway last year, the
I'm-
temporary ones?
Yeah, I'm thinking, the committee is thinking about a permanent installation.
I wonder if, since that is infrastructure, maybe that would be eligible for IDCA funding in the future.
Yeah, depending on the infrastructure and type of infrastructure, if it's, which would essentially be capital, it could be eligible, right? The question is how it fits in with the capital plan. I mean, the timing from a discussion around costs is good for this year because we're doing the sustainable service level piece, but in terms of just as a fundamentally, could we cover it or argue that it goes under IDCA? I'm pretty confident we could, It's just a question is how much of those funds are available for that without shifting funds from another area. That's all.
So I think $500,000 would be more digestible if we had the pretense of expanding those funds with grant funding. So if you had $500,000 put aside, but you actually got $1 million worth of value or 50-cent dollar construction costs, I think that would be a better system to make a
Yeah.
decision for sure.
Yeah, I think for sure you'd be trying to leverage that wherever you possibly can. It's just that you have to start somewhere. You have to put a pool of money away somewhere at some time. And, this is our only chance for this forest fire season anyway, to move forward with our partners.
And so you're talking this budget, $500,000 this budget. Okay.
That's what I'm.
So 500,000 for both projects?
No,
The fight-
but I
see,
don't,
this-
we haven't
you-
flushed out the value of those projects, right? That's why I'm looking, I don't know if the order of magnitude is enough. I suspect to get the logging done, it probably is. It's probably not enough to build a large water storage facility. Yeah, that would have to come, but at least it's a start to get it going. And then if we're able to, work with our partner, work with the community forest, work with the resiliency committee, work with public works and planning, then, maybe we're able to get some projects moving. Those are the two that the committee's talking about now. There may be lots of ideas that come out. I mean, there is another one that talks about once a logging block is cleared, that you use students to get down to the nitty gritty and you hire 10 forestry students, quote unquote, that are interested in forestry, and you move them through their careers. You give them education around understanding forestry, understanding firefighting, understanding how to get a job, all those types of things. So, that potentially can be handled inside the community forest as well, to do that junior sort of work, that labor type work that needs to be done, but at the same time enhances their skills in different. So that's been floated around a little bit too. So, but we're 6 meetings into our wildfire resiliency committee, and so these are just ideas that are coming up, but without any money, they won't be able to do anything. So that's why I'd like to introduce that, and perhaps staff can go away and figure out the different avenues we have to fund that, whether it's through taxation. I've talked to some people who feel that they are prepared to spend more on their taxes if they knew it was going towards firefighting or wildfire protection and mitigation in the community. Does it have to be all of it? Maybe not. If staff can figure out some of the other pools of money, I guess, that we have, that we might be able to to pull into this. Yeah. So I don't know where it would go from here. Scott, would you take it away as a opportunity to put it in?
Yeah, I think, I mean, in terms of scope, I mean, I think, well, there's two components. It's what is the committee and council looking for in terms of specifics around the project, I guess, which you're talking about now, which is obviously extremely in the infancy.
Yeah.
I guess the key piece, I think from a staff perspective at this point would be providing options in terms of how you would, if you're looking at putting, because what I'm hearing is you're looking at putting a pool of funds aside to be able to access to do work to whatever that might be, if it's planning or executing a certain, whatever that is.
Yeah, I don't want to call it reserve because it's not for the long term. It's really for the short term.
Yeah,
right? So-
you're looking at basically creating an account with the funding in essentially.
That's right.
So the question is how do you wish to fund it? Which it's taxation, potential grants. Which grants are applying for grants, potential existing grants, the IDCA component, and any combination of that essentially. So I think what it really comes down to is because we're not going to be able to flush out what a project looks like and get costs between now and the end of the budget discussion. So the question comes down to if council's in favor of a $500,000 expense and determining what the funding mechanism is to look after that. And that's what we can bring back in
Right.
terms of options.
Yeah.
To council.
And as I said, the committee is only interested in putting ideas forward. The project approvals and delivery would be on us.
Yeah.
Right? So.
So we can do that and just put some information together so council can take a look and discuss what potential impacts might look like from a financial perspective, right? I mean, if it's strictly taxation and the required tax levy, in the absence of any changes to the budget, goes up an additional $500,000.
Yeah.
And then any contributions outside of a tax levy, whatever, in part or whole, reduces it to whatever that number is.
Yeah, and if we did the $100,000 increase that we talked about here a little while ago, that'd be what was it, $43?
So half a million would be basically a $1.80 for the resident. It's
Yeah.
$1.83 times 5, essentially.
Times
On
five.
$100,000 assessed values, that's what it is.
On $100,000.
So if you have a $200,000 house, double that amount.
Business.
And then business is more.
Industry would
Yeah.
pick up the biggest part.
But we could very quickly provide that analysis in terms of numbers, $500,000, here's what the assessment is, this is what the impacts are, and then some various options in terms of where you, how you might want to fund it.
Thank you.
So as we spoke about before, on our tax notices, is there any way that it could be a separate line to say that, call it the Community Fire Protection Fund? And could it show, or we can't do that?
Mike?
Oh, 911 is there? Mike.
So we can investigate that. It comes down we just have to look at if it's a service area or not. And also where the funds get it, where we would tax those funds.
Right.
From a service area perspective, because right now, if it's included in our municipal levy, it gets distributed based on the various tax classes. So that's where, this
Right.
distribution of the taxes between what the resident pays versus business versus industry and heavy industry. What we just have to confirm, because we typically haven't set up service areas, is what we would need to do that if you would want to have a separate line item on the tax.
Oh, I
bill.
see.
That's all.
Yeah.
It would have to be a service. I see.
Yeah, we think, right? So that's kind of speaking a little, but just, we'd have to confirm that because not quite sure, because we haven't done something like that, obviously, as an organization in quite some time. Because
Right.
typically everything goes under the municipal tax levy and gets distributed accordingly. Because I'm pretty confident that as council, you're gonna want the contributions to that, if it comes from taxation, to be distributed based on that, the current distribution that we have, right? You don't want to exclude anyone,
No.
especially considering the benefit the resident, the business gets from the industrial side, right?
Yeah.
Hey,
Brenda, please. go ahead.
I just wanted to say that we do have partners. So if this is something House is going to consider, I think reaching out to them ASAP,
Who, I'm sorry?
to FNFN, because they might have grants grants that they could go after on all of our behalf as well.
Yeah, so we have a meeting on Thursday. If there's some positive news before Thursday, then I can talk about it. But if we understand what the process looks like, I think we'll have a better idea, right?
In the
Yeah.
meantime, can you talk to the chief in the meantime? Just you, like,
That's, well, sure, 2 days if he's around. I certainly can give him a phone call. Yeah. Okay.
Just in regards to that, I think I've had people approach me as well, like through visiting at farmers market and other people too, that I think that it's actually a good idea to be looking at this even in principle, though we don't have the details of what it could look like. There's a lot of different options in how to manage it. But I think that we should, and of course, our budget as prepared so far is to maintain service levels as they have been. And what we're really talking about in doing something along the fire mitigation front is actually another service, an additional service to what is in our budget. The question that comes to us from our communities are whether or not they want to participate in they want a different service, another service. And I would say there's a resounding yes at this point from the people in my circles.
How are you? So you're just gonna take that idea and maybe come back to us with some sort of a way that we might tax implications, how we might
Yeah,
put
we'll,
it together?
we'll circle back and discuss what we have. I mean, like I said, we'll focus on the financial component in terms of what are council's options to provide X at this point, that threshold or that amount is $500,000, right? And obviously go up or down, but we'll provide information specific to based on what we've heard in terms of your thoughts around scope of work. What we feel that may be an opportunity for a grant, like a potential future grant, which I think are limited, especially given like when you look at CRI funding and things like that, the requirements and the requirements that we have, that the province has, that we have to meet, even just to apply for certain components of scope, right? We'll take a look at what we currently have from a funding perspective, to see if there's any, if we can make a match there. And then we'll say, this is what it would look like if we were to fund it completely and taxation. And then we can mix and match whichever way you feel based on that. And if there's external funds, if it's from a partnership perspective. And then, so we'll circle back as a team and put some information together. It won't look super pretty, but it'll be information.
Okay.
And bring it back to council for you to take a look at. And we'll endeavor to do that, because it shouldn't take a whole lot to pull some of that very initial information together. So we'll endeavor to do that. So this can be part of the meetings this week, these meetings this week.
Okay, good, thank you. Are we done with the emergency operations? Okay, so I have a little note that says maybe we should consider a comfort break. So let's take 10 minutes. Let's take 10 minutes and have a bit of a comfort break. You should keep this. You'll have to keep.
All right, we are going to reverse it a little bit. We're going to go to the white tab, number 5, under the orange section tab, please. And we're going to talk a little bit about general government. So what we're able to talk to you about here is that we've seen some changes. Certainly, all departments have. We've seen some additional revenue for the penalty and interest. We're also, as I said before, we're also seeing some increases in the professional fees, the real estate fees, being able to use professional services for our collective agreement negotiations. And we also have costs in here for the satellite service for the 911 call boxes. So we're seeing an increase in those costs as well. We've identified that we've got inflationary costs directly related to software licensing. The recognition gifts that were approved by council in 2024 for the evacuation, and an increase in the uncollectible property taxes. So that's our highlight in terms of the operational budget for general government. At the end of the day, oh, and I'm on the wrong page myself, but when we look at the green sheet, the third page of it, we're seeing an increase in revenues by 1.9 million. General government takes in the allocation for the IDCA funding. And we're seeing an increase in the spending section, 2.8 million, 2.5 of that being the allowance for doubtful accounts. But the net overall is a decrease when we pull all of that together. And then we factor in the bottom, we factor in the transfers from the general surplus, and the transfers to the reserve funds also flow through here.
Question here.
Yeah.
So Tony, so back to investment income. So the budget investment income has been maintained in 2025 at 2.5 million to reflect the impact of higher interest earned. And then a significant portion of investment income that is earned is contributed to the reserve funds based on fund balances, leaving a portion of approximately 300,000 for general use. So I'm probably misunderstanding this, so you can correct me. I thought that that we were putting $2 million of that investment income into reserves, which would leave 500,000. But you're stating 300,000. So where's the other 200,000?
So it's certainly, first of all, my script was written before I had the reserve balances finalized for 2024. But essentially what we see is we see the funds going into the capital reserves based on the amounts that they have within there. So it continues to build that. It also goes to the reserve that we have for the Growing Communities Fund, the Financial Stabilization Fund, and then the balance goes into the general surplus. So in terms of my description, basically, other than the amount going into the reserve funds, it would be a contribution directly into the general surplus.
So as knowing what we know today, would that contribution be 300,000 or 500,000 into general?
I would have to
check,
dig.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can let you know.
The increase in general admin, that's where the allowance went.
Yes, it is.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yes, it sits within the treasury lines
Okay, thank
in there. Excuse me. Yeah.
You should have said you left this out in the truck.
Perfect. Any other comments or questions on the general government operating? What we have also attached here is we have attached to it the assumptions that have been made in order to put together the council's legislative budget as well. So you'll see that within this section. So other than being able to get back about the interest, we're going to move on to tab, pardon me, 6, white tab 6, which is the general government services, special projects and major maintenance. And in terms here, would you like to go through each of the pinks separately, or would you like to an overview from the summary sheet?
Nothing, I'm talking about it. I'll shut up.
Okay. So what we'll do then is, if it's all right with Mayor and Council, we'll start with an overview, and then if we get to a project that we would like to dig deeper into, please direct us and we can have that conversation. So there's going to be a few of us tag teaming through the general government projects today as we go. I'm going to take the first one. We're looking for $13,000 to utilize a cloud environment for our budget software. What we realized last year during the relocation that we had was that we had some servers that we relied on to keep the finance work together. So we're slowly moving our information to cloud environments. And this would be the last piece to move our major finance programs there.
So what country is the cloud information stored in? Is it a Canadian company or a US company?
We believe this budget information is being stored in a Canadian company at this point, but we will confirm.
Thanks.
And
Is this
yep.
a one-time expense, or is it ongoing year over year?
This is a one-time expense.
Okay.
Yeah. And it includes a $1,500, I think it's $1,500 upgrade that we would normally be doing at this point anyways, in terms of our annual software.
Okay.
And we do know that in the future, we've been given notice that currently our main software provider is moving to a different environment as well. And so within 2025, we'll be researching what that means for us for 2026. And certainly those questions around Canadian located cloud information will be analyzed.
Yeah, good.
We have the Building Facility Asset Management Planning Grant.
Thank you. This plan, or this budget will help us build a renewal plan to define the annual contributions to the Building and Facilities Renewal Asset Management Plan. We want to operationalize all the information that's been gathered over the years in all the different departments, put it in one place, get everything that it flows down, and to be able to give us out what the renewal costs are for buildings, upcoming major maintenance, and that we can put those into the same as we have for our water and sewer plans and our road plans, which we currently don't have.
So some of you may recall this project from last year. This is a continuation of that work. So it was quite the undertaking. We had 6+ years of legacy information to migrate in. And as we began doing that, we realized that there were some fundamental upgrades that were required to our GIS systems to be able to talk to CityWorks. So we're happy to report that we've been able to successfully migrate in our sewer and water data. And we'll be working through the roads, sidewalks, sanitary sewer, airport, the other asset categories through this year. So it will, it's allowing us to have real-time information on the assets that have already been installed and commissioned, and then be able to track their lifespans as we continually upgrade, renew, maintain, so that we have a better idea of where we sit at any given point. So there's a request of $78,000 of new funds this year, bringing forward some surplus from last year, carry forward funds, as we used to refer to them, from the budget that remains from last year's project.
So is this a service that we're purchasing, like, or is this a project, or is this something that we're purchasing that will do this automatically? Or do we have to input it? That's what the money, I have a contractor inputting it or something, but.
So kind of both of those things.
Okay.
So CityWorks is a system that we already have, we already use, we use it to manage work orders and service requests. The side of the tool that we hadn't been fully utilizing was where all of our asset data is included in it, so that you're actually recording these service requests and work orders against the asset. So there was a bit of the utilization of the system needed to be improved to basically take into account all of our asset inventory.
Right.
So we're migrating that data in now, but we've owned CityWorks, or we have license for CityWorks for quite a long time. So it's not a new service. It's a tool that we're optimizing the utilization for now.
So the project, the 97,000, is to have somebody to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but also we're leveraging the consultant's time to create capacity internally.
Okay.
So we're through this project, it's become a training and education opportunity for our staff to be able to take that work on moving forward with new assets that are built.
Okay.
The next project we have on the list is the Municipal Asset Management Program, the MAP program. And this is a project that's been carried forward for a few years now. And what it
Can we get your mic, please?
Oh, I'm so sorry, Counselor. So the MAP program has been underway for a few years now. We actually ended up putting a pause on it last year as we were involved with the fire season. And we received an extension to June of 2025 to finalize. But the essence of the project was to be able to take HR and succession planning, as well as document management, and create process maps and processes to go with it. So we aren't too far off from being able to finalize. We've done a lot of work with our HR system in terms of location of the process map, the file service, as well as documenting some of the gaps that we have so that we can attack them as we go forward. So it's all carry forward and or grant. The Northern Rockies communication strategy was a pre-approval, and I think we've all seen the results of that last week. And sustainable service levels.
Yeah, sustainable service levels, again, it's a carryover project from last year. We had intended and hopefully have it completed and have more than just the vehicle and equipment piece presented to council by now, but the vehicle equipment portions actually was the quite simpler portion of the process. The other service areas get into significant detail around the specific service levels and various different options for revenues, types of revenues you bring in, user fees, et cetera. So we're in the final stages of that now. And again, we'll continue to hang our hat on the wildfire season last year, but a lot of delays occurred were a result of the wildfire piece. Since this has been, because part of the process was a lot of significant communication with the various departments, department heads in terms of how they provide the service and whatnot. So some carry forward funds, some additional funds required to finish it off for the year, and then council will see the final product here in the coming months through various presentations for each service area.
And that brings us to the end of the general government special projects. We're going to flip ahead a few tabs now, and we're going to move on to regional development planning, which starts under white tab number 9, I think it is. Yes. And we're going to have Lisa.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council. The Regional Development and Planning Department is comprised of regional development, tourism, planning, building inspection services, as well as health initiatives. The department successfully led or contributed to over 75 different initiatives in 2024. Some highlights from 2024 include the drafting of the new official community plan, which we should see wrapping up soon. Amendments to the zoning and rural zoning bylaws to meet the new housing regulations. The completion of an accessible parking plan, which you heard about last night at the Committee of the Whole. Completion of an interim housing needs report to address provincial requirements. And we saw the final sale of the residential parcels in the Toad River subdivision. So
Yay.
we've sold all of those lots. Related to economic development and tourism, we completed the Viewpoint Marketing Project. And we completed a local transportation plan known as Navigate NRM, which you're also aware of. And we've initiated discussion with the Northern Rocky Senior Society regarding a local shuttle program. The department's also heavily involved in immigration, as well as implementation of the tourism strategy. Related to community. One of yours. All right.
Keeping the kids happy.
Related to community and social development, we are in the process of developing a complete communities needs strategy, which is complementary to the OCP. Many members of the RDP department were involved with the evacuation and the EOC last year. And I dare say we were fairly integral in the recovery that occurred after the evacuation, as far as ensuring that the community had access to psychosocial supports, as well as linkages to Red Cross. In relation to health, we're undertaking a Grow Your Own project, as well as a patient or medical care travel study in collaboration with Urban Matters. On the sustainability and climate action side, we did complete the Environmental Action Challenge, which was the contest to encourage green waste diversion in the community. Ongoing work is being undertaken to develop a community energy diesel reduction plan for Toad River, as well as we implemented the Food Cycler residential food waste program. And then in relation to community protection, of course, we have 2 committees. One is the Northeast BC Wildfire Resiliency and Fire Smart Working Group, as well as the newly formed Committee of Council specific to Fire Smart. So in addition to the number of projects undertaken in the department, RDP undertakes a number of day-to-day services that allow the community to develop, build, and essentially prosper. In addition to the projects and day-to-day work that we undertake, we lead, facilitate, and support or actively participate in at least 12 different community committees. We have 3 committees of council that are led by members of RDP, as well as committees such as the Human Bear Working Group, the Accessibility and Inclusion Committee, both at a local level and at a regional level, as well as the Community Health Plan Steering Committee, the Northern Rockies Roundtable, the Community Roundtable, the Youth Action Table, and the newly rejuvenated Seniors Working Group. The projects that I've mentioned are just merely a sample of the extensive and diverse work that's undertaken in the department. Our work is foundational, as you reminded me this morning. Our work is foundational to the various current and future projects undertaken by the municipality. But our priorities are really dependent on the direction that we receive from senior leadership as well as council. Our success is driven by the unwavering dedication, though, of our team and our employees who are passionate and are professional in what they do. So with that, on to 2025.
We're ready.
Okay. So the regional development and planning budget consists of an operating budget as well as special projects. We've got 2 capital projects, which we'll touch on later. And we spoke a little bit about the government transfer for the community shuttle program. In total, the department's budgets are just sitting under $3 million. Specific to the operating budget, for 2025, we are seeing a 2% increase of $33,000 from the 2024 budget. Approximately half of that increase is attributed to the operating expenses for the newly acquired condo that we just took from or accepted from North River Midstream. And if we exclude that increase of $15,000, the operating budget for RDP is sitting just under 1% increase from 2024 to 2025. Maybe I'll just stop there. I mean, the operating budget for RDP is fairly straightforward. It's, like I said, it's a pretty minimal increase that we're seeing, and see if anyone has any questions.
I don't.
Okay.
We're
Just
good.
a quick comment.
Oh. Go ahead.
When you mentioned the increase due to the condo, what you're saying is this council's reason your increase is so high?
Correct. I managed to keep it at 1%, and then you all said you wanted this condo.
Well done.
Anyway,
Well done.
yeah. Well, and this goes back to the conversation that council was having earlier about that ability to kind of some autonomy within the department to be able to move things, not necessarily special projects or wages, but things like if we underspend in legal fees for planning, we can use those for building inspection services. So we have that autonomy to move things around a little bit. So. All right. With that, on to special projects. We have 21 special projects that are included in the budget. And essentially, 52% of those special projects are funded through grants. 2% is through fees and charges. So that's the money that we would recoup for the food cycler units. We have 23% general surplus as well as 23% from tax. The proposed projects with impacts to the tax levy include the 2025 wildfire prevention project, which we can go into in a bit more detail. The airport lot 16 environmental investigation, the downtown revitalization plan, the economic diversification strategy, our tourism marketing consortium contribution, our OCP zoning and bylaw updates, as well as the the WildSafe community coordinator contribution, which has now moved from protected services into RDP. So I had intended on going through each special project, just really high level. I think council's aware of most of these special projects, and maybe just highlighting how the funding will be achieved for each of these projects, and then just stop to see if there's any questions for each one, if that works. Yep. Okay. So our first special project is our 2025 wildfire prevention Fire Smart program implementation. This is the CRI funding, the Community Resiliency Investment Funding from UBC. We've applied for a grant of 116,000 plus the additional that will cover off wages for the fire prevention officer and the Fire Smart coordinator positions. So in total, that grant funding request will be just over 200,000. We'll probably make an adjustment to this before the budget is finalized. We may not need that $10,000 in tax request. That was to top up what we figure it's going to cost to develop a community wildfire resiliency plan. But UBCM has indicated that we can apply for a higher amount.
Good.
So we may be able to reduce that or to remove that tax. Any questions on that project?
Nope.
Okay. The next one is accessible planning and awareness. This is a $500 grant that we apply on annually from Spark BC to basically fund events that promote accessibility. And a request for 22,200 in general surplus, which is essentially a carry forward from last year. This project supports the continued implementation of the accessibility and inclusion plan, as well as our contribution to the Northeast Accessibility and Inclusion Committee. Good.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, the next one is the airport lot 16 investigation. I won't talk too much about this one. This is completely tax funded. And this is to conduct an environmental assessment of lot 16 at the airport. The next one is the airport master plan. This is an $80,000 request from general surplus, and this project is a carry forward from last year. This project we've discussed with Public Works and with Scott on approach on this one. There's linkages to our sustainable service delivery. So we've delayed the start of this until we have more information from that project. The next project is the Business Facade Improvement Program. This is 100% grant funded through NDIT. And this is the remaining funds that were allocated in 2024.
Did the sushi restaurant take advantage of this when they redid all their signs?
Yes, they
They
did.
did? Okay.
Yep.
Thanks. Yep.
Yeah, we actually had 3 businesses last year participate. Yami Sushi, the Hospice Thrift Store, and Literacy Society.
Okay.
The next project is bylaw updates. We just kept the title the same. This used to include a lot of different bylaw updates, but it's really just the building bylaw update. And if you change titles in Questica, it messes things up. So we kept it the same. This is really an update for the building bylaw.
Yeah.
And it's a carryover of 32,500. Sorry, general surplus. The next project is Complete Communities. So fully grant funded. We have approximately $105,000 remaining in that grant, which we are anticipating using prior to the end of the project. The next project is our downtown revitalization plan. So request of 21,835 to continue on with implementation of that plan. And to ensure that the community benefits from the cost to develop the plan and that they see results. This will focus on theming in the downtown areas as well as wayfinding signage. The economic diversification strategy, this was presented to Regional Council on October 15th, 2024. And this is the REDIP grant funding that's available through JEDI. And it requires a $20,000 tax funding from Northern Rockies to supplement the grant.
Mayor, I've got a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, not really a question, more of a statement. So, I don't really know how to say this, but another one, like I read the rationale in here and I know that like we've done this before and we've done, you know, the other one, and now we're going to do another one that's going to combine the other 2 ones that I don't know, did we use them? Maybe we did use them. Or having been involved in all of them, I guess I need you to convince me that this will be a plan that will actually get utilized and is worth, because I know it's only 20,000 in terms of tax, but it's also staff time, which has a cost to it. So I know, I very much understand that you're not the type of person that just applies for something because the grant is there and so that we get a report that sits on the shelf. So I totally understand that. But yeah, I'm just looking for some assurance that, or some convincing that this is actually worth the staff time that has to be contributed to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Fair comments. And you're correct. I do not support applying for something just for the sake of free money. It's not free money. It just changes the work that we do when we have grant funding. The idea behind this, as you noted, our regional economic strategy that was developed previously includes a lot of great engagement. It includes a lot of great recommendations, but it's essentially unusable. And it has sat on the shelf because it's unusable. It's overwhelming. There's too many recommendations. This will take that RES and make it into something that's usable. It will identify, 4 or 5 top industries where we're going to get the biggest bang for our buck to actually start focusing around economic development and what that looks like for Northern Rockies. That's the idea behind this project, high level.
Go ahead.
Just to follow up, so something else that I've experienced over the years is the consultants come from away and they have wonderful recommendations that aren't necessarily reflective of what can be or could be or should be done in our area. So I'm assuming that this will be a consultant from away, and I have the utmost confidence in you will be able to keep that consultant grounded into, what is possible in the NRM and even desirable for the NRM. Yeah, but I am concerned that at the end of the day, it has to be a finished product that is relevant to the NRM.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments. And I always think, like, when we reach out to professionals, we rely on them for their expertise and their professionalism. It's not to alleviate the work. So our department is quite involved in any of these projects that we undertake. You'll see us out at the farmers market. You'll see us out at the rec center as staff. We don't just rely on our consultants to do the work for us, because we believe it's important that we're there with them every step of the way, and not just engagement, but actually reviewing documents and ensuring that that local context is captured. So yeah, I appreciate those comments.
I'm aware of time. Do we want to finish this section today, or is that what would, half an hour, Lisa?
Yeah, it shouldn't, I don't think it should take long to go through the rest.
Okay, let's carry on then.
The next one's the food cycler pilot program.
Good. Okay.
Food cycler pilot program. This one was presented to regional council, and council passed a resolution to extend the project, and that's what this project is. The Green Waste Diversion Fund is generally $2,200 remaining for general surplus to continue the support and implementation of green waste diversion in local schools. The next one.
Yep.
Is the
Greenhouse.
was that out loud? Okay. The Greenhouse Gas Action Plan, and we can probably rename this. I understand it feels like a nice to do, and maybe it is. But I will tell you, this, in my mind, creates a roadmap for the Environmental Advisory Committee. Of the intent of this project is to create tangible projects that can be implemented for the good of the community, both from an environmental and from a cost saving perspective. So there's things like waste diversion. There's things like reduced energy that can come out of these type of projects. Those are the benefits of it, although I understand the reluctance of, it appearing as a nice to do. This proposes using LGCAP grant funding, which in my mind then creates the pathway for how we utilize additional LGCAP funding in the future. So it really is a roadmap in my mind, but I do understand the reservation on this one.
Yeah, so I guess just for those that haven't been involved in the EAC, And Lisa, like I made my concerns known at the EAC, so I don't need to go into them again. But just to share with the rest of the group that it mostly is around you know, using that not having a plan to use that LCAP funding. And it's just like, oh, this project is great, let's do it for that. And this one's great, let's do it for that. And then it runs out and we didn't really have a plan. So if you guarantee me that at the end of the day, this isn't just going to be another exercise for the province changing, you know, whatever emissions were allowed this year or not allowed next year or whatever, that there's going to be a roadmap and a strategic direction on how to spend the LCAP funding, then you have my support.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. And we've had internal discussion, Tony, at the director's table about coming up with that roadmap for LGCAP funding. But I think this will help contribute to that as well. The next project is the Northeast BC Tourism Marketing Consortium, and this is the $6,000 that we contribute to the marketing consortium on an annual basis. The Next Generation 911 Preparedness Project is 45,000 grant funded. And it's just basically preparing us for Next Generation 911. We're just waiting for addressing standards to be finalized, and then we'll proceed with this project. The Northern Rockies Environmental Action Challenge, this is actually completed. It was included in the preliminary budget just because we still had some expenses and things that we needed to finish up, which are now complete. We can probably take this one out. The official community plan zoning bylaw updates. This one is using up the remainder of the grant that we received from the province, or the funding that we've received from the province. We've got 55,761 remaining, and we're looking for additional $40,000 to update our zoning bylaw following the update of the OCP. The rural recreation trail enhancements. This is a $20,000 request from general surplus. This one has been on the books for several years. We've actually started work on this one. Frankly, it does sit at the side of the desk while other things are being done, but we have started work on it to do an inventory and a condition assessment of what we currently have for our trails. We just haven't used any budget yet. Our SHOP local program development and campaign is a $10,000 grant from NDIT to establish our own local program, and that will be completed this year.
Should be able to leverage what's going on in the States right now. Shop local, shop Canadian.
Yay, Canada. The tourism marketing strategy, this is a $30,000 request from general surplus. Basically, it's to procure a consultant to review this and strategize the setup of our current tourism social media accounts and develop the accounts to increase relevant content, audience, and engagement. And we're also looking at creating and running a digital media paid campaign to build our audience and put our ads in front of key audiences. Our tourism strategy implementation is a request of 23,780 from general surplus. Essentially, we've got a list of projects that were prioritized through the Northern Rockies Tourism Development Day that occurred in 2024. So we're looking to spend the $23,000 on implementing some of those projects.
Go ahead.
So at last night's meeting, when Mr. Penny was speaking about the Rib Fest, this was the fund that I was trying to remember the words about. And I don't know if his request could fit into this fund because it says building tourism awareness, education, and partnerships through various engagement activities and hosting the whatever. So I just, like, there might be a synergy here, just a thought.
Rib Fest. Question mark. Yep. Good.
The last one for special projects is the wildfire in the brain, Wild Safe Community Coordinator, and this is our annual contribution of $6,000 supported from the tax levy to help support the community Wild Safe Coordinator position in the community.
If we get it, because we have to apply for it.
We've applied, we just haven't heard back yet.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to a point where we would start tomorrow with recreation operations.
Sure. Sounds great.
Sat through all of this.
You have to suffer like the rest of us. Okay, that's good. So we'll recess for today and thank you, everybody.